All right, Andy, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide for us. Today, we are going to be introducing our professional standard solution from PowerDMS. So we're really excited to bring these products in front of you, and I'm not going to be the one talking about it. I'm Alicia Conrad. I'm a product marketing manager with our team, but I'm just here to facilitate. Just a couple of quick notes here on the webinar. If you have any questions, Andy, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, I'll show you a little image here of what our control panel looks like. So this image, if you have any questions, you can go to the section that looks like this. Feel free to type in your questions, submit anything in chat, and we'll be sure to answer those at the end. The slides will be emailed to you tomorrow. If you have any questions after the webinar, if something comes up that you didn't think of during, please feel free to reach out to us at the email address listed on this slide. Again, you'll get these slides tomorrow. But we're really excited to dive into the content. And if you would like to go to the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Scott McDonald. He is our General Manager of Public Safety with PowerDMS NeoGov. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Scott. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you, Alicia. I really appreciate it. Good afternoon and morning still, if anyone is on the West Coast. As Alicia said, my name's Scott McDonald, and I head up our public safety initiatives here at NeoGov, especially around our PowerDMS platform. And I am really excited for today's presentation. Any of you that may have attended Ignite last month were the first to get a preview of our new professional standard solution. So today we're really excited to dive a little bit deeper and be able to answer any questions you might have about these new products, including when to expect them. But joining me today is Andy Henriksen. Andy joined us just a little over a year ago after he retired from Las Vegas Metro Police as a lieutenant. Andy, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Like Scott just said, I retired a little over 27 years. A couple of stints in our professional standards division, once as a sergeant for over our police academy, and then the last one as a lieutenant, where we had a lot of interactions on looking at use of forces, tactical responses, and how to document those through the process. So the opportunity came up to work with PowerDMS and realized there are those that care about those that wear the uniform, and pulled on my heartstrings. So I jumped on with very excited to join on this project.
Great. So what we want to go over today, maybe next slide for the agenda, is we'll give an introduction into why we're doing professional standards, right? We'll talk a little bit about when to expect it, who can benefit from it, the size agencies, when it will be available, and then we'll dive deep into some of the product highlights. So really, why are we doing professional standards and what's in it? Next slide. Professional standards is really made up of three primary products that are all part of a single platform, right? So while we call these products, you could think of them as individual products. So if someone just wanted to get internal affairs, they could just acquire PowerIA. If someone wanted just to get Power Vitals, they could just buy Power Vitals. But the power comes as well, no pun intended, when all three products are brought together in the professional standard suite. So from a product perspective, the first is what we call PowerAction. And think about action as any report or documentation that an officer or an employee needs to do to document the action that they took. That could be use of force, that could be a vehicle pursuit, a foot pursuit, a canine release. And the system comes with 15 standard reports that have been built out based on kind of best practices across the industry. Those can all be modified, turned off, turned on. You can combine them, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But one of the most important things that we've learned from our PowerDMS customers throughout the years is they need the ability, you need the ability to create a brand new report from scratch. You may want to document something that no one else has thought of before. So you want to quickly, without having to involve IT, be able to create a screen to be able to capture data, run it through a workflow, and be able to run powerful reports against it. So we're going to talk a lot about PowerAction today as the first piece of professional standards. The second is PowerIA. and that is what you would expect it to be, our internal affairs and complaint management. And that is truly an end-to-end complaint and case management system, from taking anything that was received via PowerAction, anything that came in from a citizen, an internal complaint, an administrative case, and run it through the entire process from the initial investigation through adjudication. And then the third piece is one we're really excited about that we call PowerVitals. And PowerVitals is really the first of its kind early assistance product. The term early intervention and early warning has, kind of formed a bit of a stigma out there in the industry a little bit. And what we wanted to do was provide the ability to get some early warning, early indication, but really focus in on early assistance to help officers with the stresses and the trauma that they're experiencing day in, day out. So those are really the three pieces of our professional standards suite. Andy. So we feel, and this is what we heard again from so many of our agencies throughout the years, is in this area, law enforcement has really been underserved. And I would say that's law enforcement, that's the corrections, side of the market, as well as our 911 emergency communication centers. You've had manual workflows with disparate systems where you're trying to collect some data here, some you're automating, some is still on paper. And from an IA perspective, we really wanted to focus in on how we can improve both the user experience as well as those workflows. You're also challenged with a lot of static forms that make themselves, sorry, Andy, can you go back to the slides for a minute? That make themselves really inflexible to the user, right? So PowerAction really is the one that drives that. And then finally, as we talked about with PowerVitals, too many of those systems were built as gotcha systems, trying to find bad officers or those things that would be indicative of a bad officer. So we wanted to focus instead on those things that allow us to help them earlier. Next slide. So it makes sense from a PowerDMS perspective. For more than 20 years now, we've been helping those departments that are looking to achieve a level of excellence, right? Whether that's in compliance with their policies, accreditation through national, state levels, right? To be very employee centric, to be able to provide the departments the tools that they need to help their employees. And then security and scalability is one of the most important lessons that we've learned from PowerDMS as well, that we built this platform on top of. So what does that mean? Next slide. From a PowerDMS platform perspective, no longer are we looking at just one product policy or just another product that may be standards or accreditation. The PowerDMS professional standards really is built on that same platform. So it's got a tight integration with PowerDMS policy that we'll talk a bit about, as single sign-on, common user management. So if you've already got all your users created in PowerDMS, they are immediately available within Power Professional Standards, right? We have app switcher capabilities now. So whether you're logging in to access policy or action or another part of Professional Standards, or our Power Time and Power Ready FTO product in the future, all of those are accessible via this app switcher. Another really common element that we've seen across professional standards is to be able to leverage CAD data, RMS data, and even training data when it comes to PowerVitals, to be able to take that in to help departments reduce duplicate entry and really be smarter and more intelligent with the data that we're analyzing. And then obviously all of this needs to be highly secured and protected in our AWS GovCloud. Next slide. So let's dive a little bit into the product highlights. As Alicia said, if you have questions during this, please use the question panel and we'll get them answered either as we're going through it or at the end. But as I said, PowerAction is really the tool that allows you to document whatever actions an employer or an officer had to take. So here is our library of standard reports, right? Everything from use of force, show of force, or use of a taser or an ECD, from a canine deployment to all of the different types of pursuits. We don't expect that any single agency is going to use all of these, right? Many combine use of force or show of force and a taser deployment into a single report, and that's fully supported. But we wanted to start with the foundation that said, if these are documents that you need to produce for any reason, then you can go in here and start to use them right out of the box without any modifications or changes needed. But we also realize that because of certain state requirements or certain agency requirements, there's additional data you may want to collect, or there's data you don't need to collect. So we'll get into this and we'll show how a lot of that is completely customizable by you without having to involve someone from a technical perspective. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Andy and ask him to walk you through in a live product a little bit more about PowerAction. Andy?
Hello, I've already logged in. This is what I see when I first log in, and I can go to my different dashboards. So you'll see the products across the top navigation bar here, and I can get to my dashboard here, or where it said PowerAction dashboard. And here's where I can see and view what reports might need attention, what's currently in progress, and or what's been submitted or pending approval. I can scroll down and I have a template or a report set up on a use of force pending here. If I see one that needs completion, what you're going to see is we want to hit a couple areas. One is the usability of that front end user, the officer, the trooper, the sheriff's office, the deputy out in the field that can navigate this through their phone, through their MDT, and complete it, save it, and move on if they have to do it in the office. So here you'll see this top nav bar where you see the use of force report. What I wanted to point out here is you're going to see through a majority of all the reports, event, employee, subjects, others involved, all these sections are pretty consistently the same, except when we get to the interaction. That interaction is that key piece that's really related to whatever that particular report is. For instance, here for use of force, you know, how many hours they were on prior to the force used, the event type, reason, de-escalation techniques. And when you get in here, it's multi-select because there might be multiple things that that officer did or deputy did prior to the force being applied that we want to have documented. Resistance types, response types. But what really gets down into it is where we can go through and see this body diagram that's completely interactive, and it's a sequence of events. What the subject did to the officer, what the officer did back to the subject, and it can build upon. I'm going to scroll down because I want you to see if I can, the body parts on here, you'll see some blue and you'll see some red. I'm going to point out why as I come back up and I hit to add an additional section. Pops up, I can put who applied the force. Well, let's say I applied it, whatever action that I want to put down on there, and I want to apply it to the subject. Here's where these body parts, I can put, if it was, let's go to the lower leg, right leg, you just saw it highlight on that part, or I can click on it here. So it's interactive touch screen if it's on the phone, the MDT, however I want to interact. But once I've hit these parts, that's where some type of contact has taken place. If there was injury or visible injury or complaint of injury, either one of these boxes are checked, it changes that from red or from blue to red. There's the report there for the use of force. I want to show you here. We do know that there's a tendency of a lot of reports that some policies or agencies require those in the field to complete. With that, I'm going to switch it back to night mode. I see that it's a little bit easier to see in night mode. After I attest on the report here, instead of just submitting it, I can submit and copy. Let's say that I was injured during this interaction. I hurt my shoulder. I could submit and copy this report and pull it over to another report and complete that as well. And it'll pull over the information that I'll have to be able to pull over the event, the employee, some of those interaction stages that might be consistent with it as well.
Andy, if you could go to the first section of the event again. So one of the really important things that we wanted to make sure of is how can we make this data easier for the officer to collect, right? There are some that, like a narrative, they're just going to have to write, right? But this was really important for us to be able to leverage our existing connections with your CAD and RMS systems, right? So last year when we introduced Power Engage, and then most recently Power Ready, they can connect to CAD and RMS systems to pull data in. So we're using that same type of capability to be able to pre-populate your use of force report, your pursuit report with any of that relevant CAD information, right? Or with any of that relevant arrest report information that could come from RMS. So obviously a lot's involved with that, but we've really become experienced now with over 130, 135 different agencies being able to connect to their CAD and RMS system and pull that data in to start the report. Andy?
Get it moving again. On here, I'm gonna come back to my dashboard and where you can see create new reports. So on these reports, the same thing. If I wanted to click on another report as well, all the reports that are listed, I do have some supplemental reports or some custom reports, and I'm going to kind of show you how we build those. Same thing, if I click on a report, it'll take me over to that screen where I can start pulling in that data from the CAD if I want to search for here. But I just wanted to show you really quickly on a vehicle pursuit, the interaction obviously is a little bit different. Date of pursuit, time of pursuit, reason for initiation, were they apprehended, what other techniques were used, and all those interactions that tie to it. So that interaction piece is key when we start getting into some custom reports. I'm actually logged in as an admin into this, a PowerAction admin. So when I come in, I can see these reports over here where I can create a custom report. And I don't know if Scott, you want to kind of talk and I'll navigate through the system on here.
You bet. And because this one has been one of the areas, not just as it relates to professional standards, but across the board, where our PowerDMS agencies have really been asking for the ability to create new documents that they can just capture information, the information they want to collect, run it through a workflow and report against it. So what Andy is showing you here is, if you can go back up a little bit, sorry, I was speaking a little too slow. Is you can take any of our existing reports, like he just did, sections of those, go back, move that zoom out of the way there. So any of our existing reports, let's say it's use of force, and you want to be able to reuse the interaction section or the subject section. You can choose any one of those as the template, and then as he scrolls down, he can see all of these sections associated with that templatized report, right? And you can choose one. Let's just take our event, right? Now, here's really where the power comes in, because you can decide what fields you want to have display on this custom collection report. You can rename them if he hits on the pencil right next to them. You can say, I don't want to call this date of encounter. I want to call this the CAD date, or I want to call this something else. You can decide what you want to call each one of these fields, right, and relabel it. Scrolling down, you can mark fields as required or not, and even visible or not. So that's taking one of our existing templates and being able to modify it to suit the needs that you have. You can also come in and add a brand new field. So if you go up to the top there, you can just create a custom field at any point and say, you know, I want a field and I want it called this, and I can make that required or not. Additionally, you can close out, we can actually start a custom report without using any of our library of reports. So for example, if we go back up to the top and say, you know what, I'm not going to use an existing template, I'm going to start from scratch, right? Give it a name, give it an abbreviation, give it a description so that all your officers and your employees know what this report is used for. Over the last several weeks, we've been getting a ton of feedback from agencies about what they might use custom reporting for. It could be everything for, let's say, one of our jails needs to document if a subject shows up at the jail with any type of injury. They just want to be able to produce a quick report that allows them to document that. Others want to be able to record, you know, the results of their body cam audits, or they want to be able to just capture basic information about an employee calling out sick or taking leave that isn't available to them elsewhere. Because this can then be made available on a role-by-role basis, you can actually decide who has access to this and who can actually fill these out. Okay. So maybe we could pop up into admin, because that could bring us to the roles discussion here as well. So a lot of granularity within the role configuration within the system. So for example, if you just take a PowerAction user down the bottom there, Andy, every one of these roles are defined by the agency, and then you get really granular in the permissions that are given to each one of these roles. Not just whether they're visible or not, but do they have the ability to take some action on it? Can they approve these? Can they reject these? Can they edit these? So all of those role configurations are set up here as well. Go back to admin. The other sections within the administration are code tables, right? So let's go to code tables for a minute. Just like with every law enforcement system, there are hundreds of code tables that drive the system itself. If you go, don't hit view, go over to the left and hit one of these. There we go. So it comes seeded. Let's go to allegations, for example, in PowerIA for a minute. It comes seeded with values that are, oh, see, you don't have permissions to do IA. He has action, I have internal affairs. But this is a great example of those roles that get defined to even be able to say you can only see certain types of code table values, right? So all of that is accessible via the admin portal here. So with that, I want to take a minute and talk a little bit about PowerIA, which I believe is the next screen. Actually, go hit this next one down for a minute, Andy, and show how we've built Action Report to be accessible via tablet, via desktop, or via smartphone. So I think on your next slide, Andy,
Yep.
Oh, sorry, go back to your deck.
There we go.
There we go. So obviously responsive UI, this is really important, both from a touchscreen perspective and the ability to interact and capture any of this data from any device in the field, right? So while people typically aren't going to write long narratives on their smartphone, if it's a matter of capturing something on a body diagram, if it's a matter of just quickly capturing a picture or an image or an attachment and making it a part of your use of force report or your pursuit report or your accident report even, those can all be done right from the smartphone as well. So all of that is accessible from any of those devices.
And Scott, before we move on to IA, did you want me to pull up the workflow screen?
Sure. Why don't we go ahead into workflow? So as Andy indicated in the beginning, all of these action reports are really driven by workflows, right? So these are workflows that you define. So when someone submits a use of force report or a pursuit report or a custom report that you've defined, what do you want to have happen, right? So let's scroll down and see all of these that are kind of standard workflows that can get delivered, but you can create your own as well. So let's go into one of these and then scroll down to the steps. So it can be very simple, where I'm just sending it to one level of approval from the officer or the author to that author's supervisor, right? And that author's supervisor can just approve it, return it, or take some other action, right? It can be multi-step workflow, where after it goes from the author to the supervisor, it goes from the supervisor to the lieutenant, lieutenant to the captain. In each step along the way, you can define who that is. So let's go down to one of these steps and drop down the assignee type for a minute, right there on that screen. So you see, in this case, I may want to send it for approval, and as opposed to sending it to the author's supervisor, I want to send it to the group supervisor or the division supervisor. I can send it to an individual. So if the deputy chief or the chief wants to be notified immediately or be a part of that workflow approval for any action report, that can be set up there as well. Each step has an allowed duration. So it has to be approved within 1 day. It has to be approved within 2 days. And then after each step initiation, those durations come true. And again, you can have these be multi-level, single level, or just notification steps. And this is really important as well. So I may not want to route a report, either standard or custom, to anyone for approval, or I want it to go to someone for approval, but at the same time, I want someone to be notified, right? So these notification steps are really important and can be added, multiple notifications at each step along that workflow. So again, very configurable, can be done by any of the administrators, either from internal affairs, from action, or for Power Vitals. Okay. All right, so let's switch back real quick to the slide deck and go to PowerIA for a minute, which is the next slide. So PowerIA, as we said, really internal affairs, right? If you go to the next slide, from an investigations perspective, right? Very similar layout. It is the same product essentially, right? But your security in your role decides what you have access to. So obviously when it comes to internal affairs, there's a much higher level of security that is put over that than would be an action report or some other type of function, right? So very specific privileges, as you just saw with the error that Andy got. He had no privileges to be able to go into internal affairs and edit the roles there, right? If you could go back into the product real quick and go to that PowerIA dashboard. What we found, however, is a lot of agencies don't just have their internal affairs investigators investigate complaints or other allegations. Some minor levels are actually investigated in the field, right? So maybe it's not your IA investigator that's going to investigate every citizen complaint, right? But that's going to be your field supervisors. So even though your field supervisors don't have broader IA access, they can be assigned to investigate a singular case, right? And if they are assigned to investigate that case, then that's the only thing they can do within PowerIA. They can't go search for other cases. They can't go enter any additional information. That's all they can do. Maybe click on new case here, Andy, and we'll walk through this real quick. So when I start to create a new IA case, right? I forgot you may not have privileges to do this. Okay, you can. I can create a case type, right? This again is defined by you. Maybe it's administrative, maybe it's civil, maybe it's a complaint. We'll just pick a simple administrative with a medium priority. Here's where I, as the IA supervisor, the IA lieutenant, can assign an investigator and then walk it through the process, right? So go ahead and hit create case here. It'll prompt me, are you sure you're creating an administrative case? I'm gonna say yes and create it, right? The next step is to pull in whatever data might be available from, let's say, an action report or a complaint or a CAD RMS as well that may have come in here, right? So I can create this from scratch, or I can pull in a complaint that's already been made, or an action report that's already set. You'll see Andy keeps toggling between night mode, day mode. Night mode is obviously critically important when we're talking about field use. We did extend it out to IA as well, but for the most part, we think most of the investigations are going to occur at a desktop, so probably not overly relevant. But so as we walk through and we see, just like with AR, there are various sections of an IA case, from the employee subject to others involved to activities. Go ahead and click on activity here for a minute. And you can add activities either by default. So for example, every case that gets created, right, I want to be able to have an activity that requires you to interview the complainant, right, or to interview a witness. These activities can be defined by you, and they're also already seated in the product as well. You can track the duration spent on it so that you can report against that, when it occurred. If there are attachments associated with it, it can happen there as well. One of the more likely automatic activities that we're going to see based on department policy, whether it's Officer Bill of Rights, is the need to be able to automatically notify an employee that they are the subject of an investigation. So we wanted to automate that as well. So if you'd go up, scroll to the top there, Andy, and hit our little gear button next to the date, we can see that we can automatically notify a subject, right? So you define a template. That template can be used in an email. It can be used as a hard copy if your policy requires you to physically deliver a copy of notice of an investigation. All of that can be done directly from the screen as well. Again, preventing investigators, anyone in the department, from having to go to another tool like Word or something else to fill out a notification template and then send it back in. So that's really all within the internal affairs process itself. And then case access is critically important. Maybe hit that one real quick, Andy, and we'll hit on it. So the view case access. So by default, The only ones that have access to an IA case, like I said, are those that are given IA privileges, right? However, there is a time where maybe someone in IA is actually the subject of an investigation. So the system will automatically block access to anyone listed as a subject in that case. Or the investigator themselves, as Andy's showing here, can come in and add a blocked user. So if this investigation were on a member of the command staff or someone else, you could just go in, identify them by name, and then they are blocked from this case, even if they have access to a broader set of IA functions, okay? So security is really paramount when we built the IA system. You can go up to admin for a minute, Andy, and hit our audit logs. This one is probably the most important as we look at the system in general. Not only are we storing every change that gets made to a record at, say, the code table level or at a case level, right? But we're also storing whether someone has viewed a record or not, whether someone's modified or delete, with a full log, both at the system level as well as the individual case level. So if you go back to either an action report, let's go to an action report real quick, one that you had there, and see if we can view some of the audit there. So every step within a workflow, every time a field has changed, every time a comment has been added or a narrative to a case or an action report or a complaint is audited within those themselves as well. So you have the ability to produce any type of audit record. Up next to your gear there again, can see those changes once you've saved them. So the auditing, both at the system level and at an individual case level, is very important. Okay. So let's jump back to our deck here, Andy. Thank you. I know I'm tossing you around to different places, but
should be coming up.
There we go. So we went through kind of the importance of having security in IA. Next slide. One of the most important things that we wanted the ability to do with internal affairs, knowing that pretty much every allegation in a case is tied to some accusation of a policy violation, right? And PowerDMS is a policy product, right? So what we've done is build the integration so I never have to leave PowerIA to go pull in the policy in question, right? So if you go to the next screen, if I've found a violation of a use of force policy or I'm investigating that, I can search for any document that's within PowerDMS. Once it's found, I can highlight that excerpt and it will automatically fill in the document name, the page, the section, the subsection, and the excerpt that is a part of that allegation. So all of that can be done directly from within PowerIA without having to leave it. Pull up PowerDMS, do copies and pastes. And the beauty of this is it will record it at the time of the case. So when the allegation was set to occur, what was the active policy at that time, right? So if the policy has changed since then, you can still retrieve the policy that was in effect at the time of this allegation. So really important to be able to have that type of integration with policy inside of IA. Next screen.
Sample of block users.
Yep. So we went through that again, either automatically because they're listed as a subject, or manually because it's a sensitive case. This is really important. There's so much involved with internal affairs and use of force that has a long history, right? Data that lives within your current IA system, data that lives in your RMS system, maybe that's where you track some of these. We wanted the ability to simplify getting some of that legacy data over into your new system, right? So the best way to do that is be able to generate just a simple CSV or Excel file, right, of those cases, as well as any PDFs that may be associated that. So if you created a PDF from those cases, then those can be just simply imported en masse through our legacy case import tool. So again, doesn't require PowerDMS involvement, doesn't really require a ton of IT involvement. It will look for validation to say, yeah, you have to have this column, or it doesn't pass our check for length or something along those lines, but it allows you to do that type of legacy import without any involvement. Next, we went through logging, won't go through that again, but here's really where I think Andy and I both kind of got our affinity and tugged at our heartstrings for professional standards, and that is the early assistance, what I call Power Vitals, right? So you go to the next slide. What we've built is actually a tool for supervisors, right? To be able to track information about those members of their team, right? And when I say information, it's not just looking for things like, oh, Scott had, 5 uses of force over the last 10 months. I'm going to have to intervene, right? That type of thresholding is available. So you can come in here and set those either individual indicators, 1 use of force in a month, notify me, or 2 uses of force in 2 weeks, notify me. You can also do multiple thresholds. So I can say, yes, 2 uses of force plus 2 citizen complaints equals an alert, right? So you can get still very granular with those types of thresholds and alerts. But what we wanted to do was really look at those things that are causing stress to an officer or an employee, right? And we know throughout their career, right, that stress increases. The more traumatic calls that they've responded to, the more impacts they've had from, working with the community or having partners, injured or loss of life. All of that adds up. So what we've created is our pulse or wellness score, right? Which is an indicator to sergeants to say, hey, their stress level is on the rise, right? And that's not just from the reports that they've written, but one of the first things that we're doing that leverages AI, right, is to be able to take the data from CAD. And I'm not talking about your incident types and dispositions, because they don't really tell you how traumatic a call was, right? So our engine will read the notes of CAD and be able to tag something as traumatic, not traumatic, or neutral, right? And all of those indicators and all of that information from the stressors of a CAD event is what creates this wellness score for the sergeants to be able to look at for their team. You go to the next slide, then you can see how, let's say, just Jonathan Rosenberg here compares to others in the department, how his score has trended over time, because stress and trauma build, right? It builds over the course of the career. It builds over a course of multiple types of interactions, and be able to see where they stand in relation to the rest of the department, their peer groups, and other groups and divisions as defined by you. And then from this, we wanted to give the sergeants the ability to automatically create some type of assistance. So while we can take in data from a variety of sources, CSV files, connections to your CAD, connections to your HR system if you have it for leave usage, we pulling in information from Power Time about the number of hours worked, all of those contributors to stress, we can take them in and then present them in that way. Next slide, Andy, and be able to give you the ability to track the indicators, set your thresholds, but most importantly, next slide, the supervisor will be able to create an assist plan. And this assist plan allows them to come in here and say, given that your stress score is as high, I want you to go talk to peer support, or I want you to, kind of go watch this training class. And it can be formalized here as an assist plan and do those quick check-ins, right? Where it's a conversation between the sergeant and the employee, and it's not punitive, it's not disciplinary, it's just getting them some assistance as early as possible in that scenario. So then next slide, we have these assist plans that can then be followed up on, right? So yes, I had the conversation with Andy, I've asked him to go do these things, and now he's completed them, right? So we've done the supervisor check-in and we've done the assist plans, and we can now start to see the impact that's having on their stress score. And that score is really important because while we look at it at one point in time, it really is an indicator of stress that builds over time as well. So that element is really the most critical part of Power Vitals, is to be able to track those indicators that may indicate that there's a problem, and for the supervisors to go take some action on that. Okay. Next slide. I think that may have been our last one.
Yes.
So that was a quick preview of the three primary components of professional standards. So where are we? For the last several months, we've been rolling this out to pilots across 4 states now, small agencies, as much as 30 sworn, very large agencies up to 2,200 sworn, and everyone in between. Our pilots are starting to go live over the next quarter. And really, we expect to have general availability at the end of first quarter of 2024. So we have signed up folks on a waiting list to get more information. And that VIP wait list is probably where many of you got the invitation to this webinar. That communication will continue as we proceed. I think we have some questions that have come in. Alicia, would you like to come back and fill us in with what's being asked here?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to start here with a question about users. So I have a question: will I have to upload all of my people into these new products if I already have PowerDMS?
And the answer to that is no. So we have built our common user framework, right? That once you're adding professional standards, right, your PowerDMS users are synced over to professional standards. In fact, you're not even managing your users in professional standards. You manage them in one place in PowerDMS, and any changes made, whether it's enabling, disabling, resetting passwords, those all take effect over on professional standards. So no additional work that has to be done there.
Perfect. Okay, a question about PowerIA. Within IA, can you use the officer notification function during any step of the process?
Absolutely. So that notify subject, right, is available to the investigator at any point, right? And the template that you define where it can pull in specific fields that you want to have appear in your notification, that's defined by you as well. So no rigidity on when those notifications have to occur. They can occur at your discretion.
Perfect. Okay, another one for IA. You can search policies, but can you search specific issues within reports for audit reasons and getting examples of specific issues?
So if you're searching for specific issues within a document that lives within PowerDMS, yes, you can do that. If you're looking specifically for other action reports or other internal affairs cases, that's supported in and of itself. So there's an advanced search capability where you can look for any of those right from within IA or AR. If you're looking for something that's in a document of PowerDMS, that's obviously automatically supported.
Yeah, another one just came in. Can videos be uploaded?
Absolutely, yes. We started off thinking most of our agencies were just going to link to, let's say, their digital evidence management system, right? But what we've heard is I need the ability to actually upload the video footage itself. So we do allow attachments now that are images, our video, our documents, etc. But you can also just store the link, right? So if it's in an evidence.com or if it's in another DEMS, you can link to it or you can upload it.
Awesome. Okay, we have a question about complaints. How will I be able to manage complaints? Is there a feature or form for that?
Absolutely. Andy, if you could just click back over, we didn't actually show that real quick, but there is a whole complaints module, right, that supports both citizen complaints as well as internal. If you hit citizen complaint real quick there. So if someone were to call up or walk in and you're doing this on behalf of a citizen, then you can fill out the citizen complaint form for them. The same for an internal complaint. Someone can come in here and create an internal complaint. We also have an external web browser-based citizen complaint portal that can be either embedded into your website, if your department website has ability to do that, or we host it for you. So someone can go in, select your agency, and submit it that way. Regardless of how it was entered, each type of complaint traverses a workflow. It can have information about the citizen, attachments, links that are all scanned prior to being uploaded, and attestation as well. Great questions.
We have a question about if they want to move to us from another software, are we able to pull their information over into PowerIA and PowerAction, or would it have to be manual?
Nope. So there's two ways to do it. From a legacy case perspective, we talked a little bit about that import tool that we've built, right? So you can export it out into an Excel file, we'll ingest it, or a CSV file, we'll ingest it, right? That's for legacy data regarding cases, et cetera. But what we can also do is we can import all of your code tables, right, in the same way. So if you have all of your code tables defined in your legacy system, all of that can be exported and then easily imported through our import utility.
Oh, it looks like we got another one. Hold on just a second. In regards to Power Vitals, does PowerDMS interface with other timekeeping programs?
Yeah, so since we haven't introduced this as yet, we're doing it right now, right? Our expectation is we're going to have to, right? Whether it's power time, whether it's in time, whether it's a lot of different scheduling and time systems are used out there. We recognize we're going to have to be able to take that data from a variety of different systems, right? Again, whether that's through a CSV import, whether that's through some type of API connection, it's dependent upon the scheduling system. But yes, we know we're going to have to take system or data from other systems that aren't PowerDMS. Now, the easiest thing is just move PowerDMS for everything, but we realize that's probably not practical. So.
Okay, I think that is all of our questions.
Right.
Yep, I think that's everything.
Well, it's great. Andy, thank you very much for both your insight and for playing Vanna White for me. You did a good job of keeping up there. And we really want to thank you. There's a lot of interest that we're hearing about, both from the waitlist perspective as well as those that we're meeting with today. I will tell you that if there's interest in being an early adopter, right, we'd love to hear from you. While our pilots are out there proving it with us now, we'd love to talk to some of the agencies now that may have a short-term interest in this. So feel free to reach out and we can have that conversation. So, all right. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.